I want to start today's presentation by acknowledging that this program is taking place in the unceded territory of Lil'wat Nation. My name is Nikki Madigan and I'm the curator here. Welcome to Tea and Tales. This is our 5th presentation this summer. We do 7 a summer. And this year's theme is Canada 150. So we're talking about Pemberton history in the context of Canada's 150th birthday. And we do film these presentations for the community record, and we make them available on our website about a week after each presentation. Just a note about next week, we have Eric Anderson visiting from Squamish. He'll be presenting Pemberton in the World News. He's looking at references to Pemberton through historic newspapers. And our last tale of the season is on flood control in Pemberton with Brendan McLeod. We want to thank our local presenters, Johnny Jones, our volunteer bakers, and all of you guys for showing up today to support the program. I also want to introduce you again to our program and promotions coordinator, Nathaniel Dolan Miller. He's our chief video producer, and he's been doing some great work for the museum this year. He's going to be creating a highlight reel of the 7 presentations that we're doing this summer as part of his summer student job. But I want to introduce you to Johnny Jones. Of course, a lot of you already know Johnny or work with Johnny, but he's going to walk us through Lil'wat Territory today and share his knowledge of the land with us. Johnny is a cultural technician with the Lands and Resources Office, and has spent his life walking and studying Lil'wat Traditional Territory. His traditional name means weather changer, and he's spent his life promoting traditional knowledge and the stories about the land that sustains the Lil'wat Nation. The people and the land are one. Johnny's contributed greatly to our understanding of Lil'wat Traditional Territory, and he often travels to conferences and gatherings to share his knowledge. He works with archaeologists, ethnographers, and high school and university students to share his knowledge and broaden our understanding of Lil'wat Territory. We're honored that Johnny could join us today to share his stories. Thank you.
Thank you all for showing up here. Johnny Jones, and I'll be talking about Lil'wat Traditional Territory. Part of our, like in a lot of our books and stories that we have, like here and we have in the back, here's a declaration of our tribes, 11 tribes. And it was, the declaration was in 1911 for all the tribes, and we claim that we are the rightful owners of our tribal territory and everything pertaining thereto. We have always lived in our country. At no time have we deserted it or left it to others. We have retained it from the invasion from other tribes at the cost of our blood. Our ancestors were possession of our country centuries before non-natives came. It is same as yesterday when the letter came, and like the day before when the first fur trader came. But we deny the right to it. We never gave it nor sold it to them. We certainly never got the title to the country from us, neither by agreement nor conquest. And none other than us would have any right to give them title. In the early days, we considered the government, the white chief governments, our supreme race, or never lied nor stole, and always acted wisely and honorably. We expected that we would lay claim to we expected what would lay claim to what belonged to themselves only. In these considerations, we have been mistaken and gradually have learned how cunning, cruel, untruthful, and even some of them can be. Okay. So that's what was in the declaration. That was part of it. This painting here was done by Annie Ross from SFU. She did this, and this was me and Uri Creek. We had to protect our burial grounds at the time in 1990, so I figured, you know, I'd put that in there and just give you an idea what the fight still continues. Okay, And this is the same as yesterday, and that's in this book here. And you can get this book at the Upper Lil'wat Tribal Office if you want to get a copy of it. We sell them up there. And it talks about all the treaties that were done in BC here. There's unceded Indian territories, there's no treaty. Okay. And this is Jane Tate's map from 1906, and you can kind of see how the different tribes are, like the Naaxin tribes, the lower tribes, and our Lil'wat tribes were a separate and distinct tribe from all the other tribes. And the Upper Shatlim, Upper Lil'wat people there, and it's like Darcy and Seton Lake, and the Fraser River tribes are like Lil'wat, Cayush, and Ridge River, and all out, Fountain, Pavilion are all in that section there. And right down at the bottom it gives you the dates there. And this was one of the first maps we started using, because it had all the different tribes in there in our traditional territory that we've claimed, that we protected in our days. And this is one of the first key maps here that we used to shape out our territory, and there's place names and rock markers in the land there, and any markers within the area that our people are familiar. And this year it's the Lil'wat River drainage here. Okay. And we had 2 trails going to the coast to the seashell tribes. And they were last used in the 1800s. We traveled up here over the glaciers down into East Toba Inlet here, and there's a marker right there, and we go right down into Seashell area, and there's the Meager way down in there. And this is that marker at the East Toba Inlet River there, and it's right at Zoltan Creek there. When you go over the glacier, and you go down into Zoltan, into the valley down to Seashelton. So these are markers, and this carving was pointing downriver from Zoltan Creek. And this is one of my long shots from I did an airplane ride in '97, and so I had a still camera and I started taking photos. But here is the Silt Lake right here, and there's the glacier right there, and the Lil'wat Mountains is right behind the ridge here. So this is a close-up of the Lil'wat glacier, and
That's 97.
this is a 97, and Quat is the name of it, and that's the dry spot in the center of the glacier, and that's the first place name within our territory place name maps list. And I took this this is some geologist that was doing some field work on the glacier receding back from 1947. You see the Silt Lake was not there. It was you can see this here, that was a glacier at one time there, then it kept receding, and they got the different dates there, 2002, and when we kept the 1955, when it kept receding, they're keeping track of it receding. So okay. And this is this is Silt Lake, and this is the mouth of the Lil'wat River, and that's what it looked like back in 1997 when I flew over there. And the glacier is back here, and this is right where this is the runoff right off the glacier here. But I took this photos showing all the pumice walls here inside of the mountain there, and that's why our water is always dark brown all the time. It keeps falling into there and keeping the Silt Lake. Yeah, and in 2010 we did another heli flight there, and we were doing our work for the interjects and the IPP, and we went up after the big meager slide. We flew up the meager slide, and we came down Pumice Creek, and we came down into the above Salal, and this is Pumice Creek slide there, and we hit right into the side there, and that's why we get big floods that blocks rivers there, and they blow out after. But there's a glacier right there again. And Betty Talbot took this in 1940. Yeah, in 1940 they flew over in an airplane, and she took this photo there, and you can see the Keogh Falls. And when you read in Charlie Mack's book, when he talks about the stories in there, he said that there was no falls there, that the water used to be like level. And he said it probably got all blocked up in there, and that's how the fall got created like that. And I have the CD of Charlie Mack talking about that too. Yeah. And I took this in 2010 there when we were doing work with interjects there, and you can see how much water comes out of there when the first snow melts. That's the Keogh Falls. And back in the people used to travel over the glaciers, they used to go goat hunting up Meeker. They used to pole boat right over the Keogh Falls, or jump right over to the other side and go up Meeker and goat hunt. And this is one of our projects we did with the interjects here. Interjects worked with Lil'wat Nation, so they wanted a kiosk board, storyboard of our people in the area. So Lex and I got together and with Randy Bouchard, and we did all this stuff and my drawings, just talking about all the meager area there. And now we're switching over. This was all the north we just looked at. Now we're switching over to the west, and to the west there at Rebel Creek. This is Rebel Creek, and this is the barrier. This barrier first came down like 3,000 years ago, and we had a tribe living below there at the mouth there until 1850, 55, and people started talking about it, and the Canadian Journal of Science, they talked about it in 1855, and they kind of did a research and documented all rock fall and the age, all the stumps and trees that were caught in the slide, and while they're going up in there with a bulldozer, they're pushing in a road, and one of the skulls came rolling down from our people, and so we got that skull back in 1980, and now that skull is put in our graveyard in Mt.currie, so that's where one of the skulls come from, is Rebel Creek. And this is Black Tusk. Tusk is the southern boundary of our traditional territory. It was documented this mountain will always be there. It'll never, can't be moved, can't be changed. It'll always be there. It's a traditional territory boundary of the Lil'wat Nation and Squamish Nation. And back in the 1980s, I had my dad, I got him talking there, and I kept asking questions, and I said, where's the transformer rock past Rebel Creek and the Chuckamas River? And so he told me, and I'll take you to it. So and the stories talk about the transformers that came through, started changing people into rock, shaping the land, and this chief here from Rebel Creek, he was in Chuckamas there. He was fishing when he was ignoring the transformers, and the transformers were talking to him. And so one of the transformers turned him into rock, and so that's how the chief was documented at Chuckmas there. It's right by the old salt shed, if you know where the old salt shed was. not where the new one is, but where the old one is. Okay, back in September 24th, 2009, when the engineers at Daisy Lake Dam wanted to drop the waters there to fix up the dam, they called us, and so we had to do an archaeology dig around, walk around where the water receded down. And while I was walking there, and I found this spear point there, and so that was like probably 4 meters under the water, and it's it's still in good condition. But yeah, that was awesome find. That was the only find we found there, and it was pretty cool that day. And here's the story of the when we talked about the barrier first coming down there in 1858. There, the Indians told Downey in 1858 that the slide that occurred 3 years earlier. So that was in 1855. So, and they told Father Patterson back in 1947 about it. So that's how it was documented. That was in an Earth Science journal. And coming this way to Whistler, and back in the 80s, somebody found a skull there, and they handed it to the RCMP in Whistler from Green Lake area. And so, like, we have a village site there at the mouth of Fitzsimmons Creek, and I was always told there's supposed to be a cave full of burial bones there, but this one had red ochre on it, and it's a 4-year-old child, and so it was handed back to us too. And this is only a paper hard copy that we got, so I scanned it and kept a copy. And I didn't get to keep a copy of the other one from Lil'wat Creek because they buried it with the skull without photocopying it or keeping a record of it. So I went to the graveyard and I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it because when the flood came through, they knocked all the crosses, unknown names, so we didn't know where it was. So I just started poking around with a stick, and I couldn't find the box because the box was only under the ground that deep, and I couldn't find it. So I was going to dig it up and get a copy like this, so I only got this copy from Constable Skinner. Yeah.
And it was found at the mouth of Fitzsimmons?
Not exactly sure. I think it was found in a barn over there in Whistler. It was dug up, and that's all they had, and that's all the stories I know about it. And yeah, well, this was in Whistler. And so from there, like right now, in 1850, our people at the mouth of Fitzsimmons was the Wolf clan, and they all died. Not all of them, 2 of them survived, but most of them died from the smallpox that came through. And so this is one of the pictures. It was drawn by Marie Abraham, but this picture was done for the Driftwood Bay, where we're doing a dig right now. All our people at Driftwood Bay that died of smallpox got just buried. They collapsed the Ishkins and burned it. That's why right now, today, we're finding a lot of charcoal there, and so we're just getting down in there. So that's just a drawing, give you an idea. And this is like the last looking down to see if everyone is passed away from the smallpox, and before they collapsed it, because there's one child still moving around the bottom there, and so they had to make sure everybody stopped moving before they burned and collapsed the Ishkin on them. And just the drawing showed you kind of what they did to the Ishkins when they collapsed it. This story was done at Driftwood Bay. All these 3 drawings were done by Marie Abraham. And this is Green Lake. When we were flying up the Russet Lake, I got a good shot at Green Lake. And so this is Fitzsimmons Creek there. There's that golf course. And Ishkins is probably right about there. And the longest time I didn't know where it was until we got the forums, site forums on it. And Dave Hall had his GPS and he used the coordinates in there, and he ended up standing in the middle of the golf course. But I walked like probably here a little past the wall there. There's some bushes, and between the tracks and the bush, the golf course. That's where I found the Ishkin Depression there. So it's still there, yeah. It was recorded back in '75. And this is our trails from Mt.currie down. We had like in Whistler, we had the village site, the Wolf Clan there, and these were two different trails. And the other trail went up around up the Sioux Valley around Lesser Ring, and they came down Squamish River into Squamish, and our people used to go in there and we'd go right to the mouth and yell at the Squamish people and scare them out, because and sometimes our people would take their canoes, and they would take their canoe and they go right to Victoria. We used to go to the island in Potlatchy too. So, like their Squamish were afraid of us, and they're afraid of the northern Chilcootins. So anybody that yelled at them, they'd run. They'd take off. Yeah. So this is Fritz Simmons here, and right there, that's where the recorded Ishkin site is there. And so this is one of the ARC site maps, the drawings that we use. Every time we record something, we have to have a hard copy drawing of the area, and there's Green Lake. And give you an idea what the house could look like in the past, this is a side view of the frame. And we're right now, like we're digging somewhere in here, and we're finding a lot of charcoal and everything in there, and so it gives you an idea. We had a ladder up in the center to the top there, and in winter time it covers like right up in there, and you could just probably see a little bit of the ladder there in winter time, so you don't even know that people are there, and you probably walk right by them, because they don't like the fire all the time. They light a fire early in the morning and late in the evening just to cook up something for the people that live in there. And sometimes they have side doors for the older people, like the elders that can't climb like us young guys, and they use the side entrance. So yeah, this is what it will look like when it's from the outside view. That's what a house pit would look like. So I believe this one is north from us in Mt.currie here. So it's kind of, you can see all of the wood is just all piled up there, and dirt just pushed on top, and you can see the ladder there. And these are just like stories from James Tate, and James Tate came through here, and from 1906 to 1912 he started documenting stories of our people, and this is one of the hunting war stories about people going to Squamish to have battle with the Squamish people. And they were walking on the ice across there, and there's a bird there, and when the people were hungry, they saw these birds, so they just pointed with their finger, and the birds would fall down, and they'd cook them and eat them. So that's how powerful some of the medicine people were back in the day. And this other one is a young person hooking a copper in Green Lake, and when he was the last grandson, and he was living with his grandmother, and his grandmother made him some fishing tools, so he went fishing and he hooked up the big copper, and he became an important person after that, and because he had copper, and he was able to share the copper with other tribes and give the stories to them. And this top one here is one of our medicine men in Green Lake. He was canoeing around there, and all of a sudden something came falling down from the sky, and it was like a meteor that came down, hit the water. So he grabbed that meteor and he put it in his medicine bag, and that's what gave him more luck into his medicine cure and helping people. And the story belonged to like John Skye. He was the last person that was trading in Green Lake. And we also worked with when we were doing the highways Iowa, before the 2010 Olympics, before the widening roads, he wanted to put some kiosks boards of our stories along the highway, and this one was done for Green Lake, and so we put a bunch of stuff together, and some of my drawings there, and there's the Rebel Creek slide, Black Tusk, Whistler and Blackcomb here, Chapton, and there's Green Lake, and the big Zuni Palo we call it, it's the big key, the snake, serpent that swam from there to Green Lake and back. So the way the river of Golden Dreams is shaped is, you know, they're saying that's the big serpent made that creek. And so a lot of stuff happened around there, and this pictograph back in the 70s was right beside the highway where Green Lake, where the bad turn is. And we were going to Squamish in a soccer game there, and highways were standing there, and they're talking about what to do, and we were going by there, and the road was really narrow yet, like it was probably a single lane road, and they wanted to widen it. So what they did is they blew it up, and so that is no longer there, but there's this little past it where the rock cliffs are, where the chief head is. There's a few of them left untouched there, but they're starting to fade because all the trees and everything were cut down and blown up. The rocks were blown up. They were giving it shade, so they're starting to erode. And and this is one of them. And we did research on John Sky and about all these power helpers, and one of these power helpers was the American Beatron, and so to put his mark in a rock, he made that Beatron's footprint on as a pictograph, just to show that he was there in that area where he trained, because not too far down below, that's where he bathed, and he made like 4 rows of cedar boughs, probably like 4 feet high, 8 feet long, and there's 4 of them that he had to do in all these trainings. That's how the medicine men did it back in the day, in isolation. And this is another one that's right at that corner there, at, just by Cougar Turnoff there. It's another pictograph there, and you can see, I don't know what you guys think about. Every person will have a different opinion what this kind of looks like, but you have to be the one that's training to understand, to do it, to make it, and it's your story written. And these are like the lakes, and these are the mountains, and these are the creeks. And yeah, this is a blow up on I reading all my stories. I talk about the 2-headed snake at Rebel Creek, and all the rebels coming down over our people, and Whistler and Blackcomb there, Chapton there, and Squeachu there, and the story of the person getting a canoe, and John Sky, and where the pictographs are, and where the culture modified trees are, and the village site here. And our people are living, the Wolf clan were like living there until the smallpox killed most of them. And the Squamish Lil'wat Cultural Center in Whistler, they asked me to go do some drawings, so I went and did this one. I did several of them, but this is only one of them. So this is a Whistler and Blackcomb again, and the Green Lake, and the snake there, and I just kind of put some tags on it there, just so people understand the copper canoe and Green Lake story. And in Whistler area, we have a lot of place names, a lot of cultural sites, and everything there. And our people were living there till 1858, and we moved them to the last 2 Romanian moved to Pumpkin Valley after the smallpox that got them, and the rebel that came down and killed all the tribe there. But we do have a lot of. This is Chuckamas Lake there, and we have cultural sites all over the place there. And we're starting to record a lot of other sites. as they do logging nowadays, they have to send us a referral and we go out and take a look, and we find and document a lot of sites yet today. Okay, now we're moving from the south, we're moving down to the east, and to the east is where the Thompson tribe live, the Lytton people there. And there's Lytton there, and they had a trail right to Lil'wat Lake here. And this is one of they use it for trade or war times, and this is one of the old, I don't know, probably one of the first maps made there in 1830 or something like that. So I've always was asking my dad a lot of questions, because I always wondered, where did people kill the Thompson, the warriors that came down in 1850? They raided us, stole women and children and food and stuff, and they started going, this is Lil'wat Lake's down here, and there's Lytton over there, and they're going back. And there's Tundra Lake and Stein Lake there, and I kept asking my dad, where, and so there's Scudmore Creek there, and he said 2 creeks back from Scudmore, that's where our people killed all the Thompson warriors right in there before they're halfway home. So that's where it is,
And when did that battle happen, Johnny?
1850, 1850, yeah. It's marked right there, yeah. So in that story, Spitlim, he was the chief in Lytton there at the time in 1850, and he told these warriors not to come and bother us because he had relatives here in Lil'wat, and but the warriors were young and reckless, and they were bored, I guess, at the time. They wanted to do something, so they wanted to go do a raid in Mt.currie, and so they came down and they didn't listen to him. But when our people killed all but 2 of them, and we sent them back down, and when we got back to Lytton, this is a Lytton story, and Spitlim was sitting there sharpening a stick there by the fire there, waiting for the warriors to come back, and when they came back and told him that most of the people got killed up there, and he said, I warned you, I told you not to go bother them, and he put those stakes right through the hearts of those 2 last warriors, and so that was how he then, back then, so that's when peace began after that war in 1850, and yeah, so that's that. And this is one of the leaf point spear heads that I've actually found across the lake from Lizzie Bay there, and we had the graveyard there, the Blue Cross, from our people, getting, used to live there, they got buried there, and so this was like 5 feet out from the shore in 5 inches of water, and I was walking along the shore and I saw it, and so, I flagged it, and I got my GPS, and I walked out GPS and marked it all out before I removed it. So that's so I don't even have it here. It's at home. But yeah, it's probably this size, same length as this. Yeah. So just before the dig, this is at Lizzie Bay there. There's like Lizzie Bay and Driftwood Bay. Lizzie Bay, there's a whole bunch of old rectangular CMTs there, and you can see how far up they go. And this is Arnie Jim, and Arnie Jim is he's probably that taller than me. And yeah, he's standing there looking up at him. There's a whole bunch of them there. I think there's about 13 of them like that, the really big cedars there. Like these are lobes that probably go back to like 400 to 600 year old lobes when you first made those, remove the bark there. Because the bark, they use the bark, they put on ishkins before they put the dirt over the ishkins there, and sometimes they even use the bark too to make canoes out of them, just like birch bark canoes. They even use the bark to do that. And today our people still use the inner bark to make a whole bunch of flowers and the baskets and stuff, you know, and they still sell these stuff. Yeah. And this is the same place in Lizzie Bay, and you can see the chop marks there and chop marks there, and you can see how big the lobe is there and how much the face there is. And one time I went over there and parks were there, and I was asking, what the heck's this tag for? And they said, oh, it's tagged to be cut down. And I looked at them and I said, no, you can't touch it. I said, you can't touch it. It's a CMT, a culturally modified tree, Aboriginal used tree, and you can't do it. And so it's still standing there. So you know, lucky I was there that day. And if I wasn't there, it would have been gone. Yeah. And you guys probably recognize this cabin here. It's just out here. It's Johnny Andrews' second cabin. That's like probably 3 kilometers up from the mouth of the Lizzie Creek. And it's in good shape and the way it is. Compared to, you go look at his first cabin down there at Lizzie Bay, it's all like right down to the ground, rotten. All the logs are, you know, it used to be like way up high there, but now it's just disintegrating back to the earth. So it's good to see something, you know, preserved. People can, you know, see what people use when you go trapping. Okay, and this map was created by Safra Duffy in 1860, and he was in Lil'wat Cayush area, and back then they wanted to find a route into to Pemberton Lil'wat area. So, but the Indians told them there's already a trail there in 1860, and they showed them, and they showed all the different places where people had, you know, gardens and where they picked, harvest and everything all the ways there, and right through, and there's Duffy Lake right there. They used to call it Melbourne Lake at one time. So.
And what's that Colon Bridge?
Where's that?
Just below Lake Melbourne.
Right there? I guess that's one of engineers. They build the bridge here to get across. Yeah. So there's Lil'wat Lake there. Oh. There's Lil'wat Lake there, and they had different camps there, and there's Joffrey's there, and there's Cayush turnoff there, and there's like tons of stuff there. In the Quackbar, there's Anderson Lake. They had the route came over here, their trail to Duffy Lake. They did some hunting up there, and like there used to be a very good goat hunting, grizzly bear hunting back in the day. Okay. So this is here as we call it Tuck. That's a far end of Duffy Lake there. It's a log jam. Tuck means log jam, and that's one of our place names for the area. And straight across, and on this side, Baptist Ritchie has a old one of his cabins there. And that cabin, they used that cabin in 1933 when my grandfather died up in the blowdown area. So that's where they're camping there, and they had to go up over the blowdown and do the searching to the Stein to find my grandfather back then. And when he was trapping, he got killed by avalanche. And we work with BC Parks, and we do like they do a kiosk there, and there's our storyboard right by Tuck there. It's a storyboard. If you go through there, you can stop there and take a look and read it. And yeah, so those are the things we do along the highway. Okay, now we're moving from the east. We're going towards the north, and this is a transformer footprint at just before Gates Lake. And it's still there, and when I was like back in probably '69, Used to, a whole bunch of us young guys used to hang out together. You know, our feet are all different sizes and everything. And one of the elders that couldn't speak English, she only spoke our language. She told us to go over there and you guys put your foot in there and you know it'll fit perfect. And it doesn't matter how big or small your feet are. You go over there and put your foot in there, it'll fit. It'll fit perfect once you get your heel in there. And it'll feel perfect. And the transformers, when you went through it, have been put that mark there. And this footprint is supposed to represent the mark between an upper Stacklim and a lower Lil'wat tribe. It was like a boundary marker done back in the day when the transformers came through. And this is the transformers route. They came up through the Harrison there. They were leaving parts here all the way, and they come into Mt.currie, then go always up to Lil'wat. And you know, as they kept going, they kept leaving parts, and they came back and they went towards Green Lake, this way down to the coast. And so there's like we have you know stories of where there's a chief there. It was the last one I documented. I tried to put pictures of each one of them in there and the routes. Okay. And this is one of my, there's where John Sky is, we call that, and there's two hunters right up on top here above John Sky there that were transforming, they were hunting up there, and there's the footprint there. And there's again, there's the chief there, and this one here is from the marks from the receding from the flood there, right in the mountain there, and that's Grandfather Mountain we call it, because some of our people landed on top of there and escaped the great flood that came through. Most of the mountains were covered with water, so and these were the receding marks of the flood. And this one here is, we did a bunch of radiocarbon dates, and actually, Bill,
Yeah.
come up here.
No.
So this is Bill Angelbeck, I worked with for 3 years, and he's an archaeologist, and he's in charge of the digs that we did, and he can probably describe the digs. Can you just?
Sure. Well, you were doing the one closer, the hummingbird, right?
Yeah, that's the right one right there.
There we
Yeah,
go. I figured.
yeah.
Now I'm figuring it out.
Yeah,
But you were involved with that one. What
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
yeah.
So that's the first radiocarbon date, is it?
Yeah,
In the, there's not a lot of radiocarbon dates in the Pemberton area. Johnny's been involved with all excavations for radiocarbon dates. So the hummingbird site back in 2010, pretty young.
yeah,
So it's actually, people just look at the radiocarbon, or look at the rock art, don't think much of it. But only more recently people figured out, well, they probably had fire pits when they were putting the paint up. Let's excavate below the panels, and then they do that, and they get carbon from that. And that one was so that is not that old, only 100.
it was 120 plus. I worked with Dr. Brian from Ottawa, from the Civilization of Man. He came up here and he wanted to do these, to collect what do you call, ochre that drops from when you paint on a rock there, and some of the ochre drops to the ground and gets covered up as time goes by. So we dug down, kept digging down every 10 centimeters and using a paper glue on it, and when we see some charcoal, we put it in there, pat it, and take it and number it and file it away, then he'd take it back to the lab, and so that's how we managed to get to 120. But when I was a young boy, my grandfathers, they still had their medicine bags, so they were still using the paints back then. So it was ongoing use, and I wanted to carry on using some of the paints there from my grandfather, but I was told that I had to go make my own stuff. I can't take his. He put his in the ground for, put it away, and it got buried, and so he said, you go do yours. So yeah, so I've been doing a lot of gathering, studying, and working on stuff like that, and doing some of my own stuff, fasting and marking some areas in my own time.
You were also involved, yeah, there it is,
Yeah.
An excavation on the Birkenhead River, one of the bridges. So up in this area, so that's also, oh, that's even older, that was the first one. But a house located there 2,500 years ago is what the date turned out to be.
Yeah,
And then
2570, yeah.
And then we excavated 2 years ago on the lowest Birkenhead pit house village. It's quite large. Lots of cache pits located here.
Yeah.
Squarish pit houses, which is a little bit distinctive. And we excavated through the floor. A lot of the dates turned out to be 3,000 to 1,000 years ago. And then we thought we were still in the house, but we actually excavated through the floor to an even more archaic period fire pit. So people have been using that landform for, it turned out the date came back 5,500 years old. So it's the oldest date in the region that we've got. So, and we excavated at 80s Lake last year and at Samson Creek, which is
Yeah.
off the map, but we're getting those radiocarbon dates
Soon.
late August, yeah.
So how long does it take to get a date?
Depends on Bill.
A year?
Plus it depends on the lab. So we send them
Yeah.
to the lab, and like their July run was booked, and so we're on the August run, when they'll be able to put our samples in. And the dates are pretty quick. Once like they run it and they test the emissions of carbon-14 for. I'm not sure what the exact length of time is, a matter of days, and they, based on the ratio of carbon-14 relative to the regular carbon that we all carry, carbon-12, they can get an idea of how far it's depleted, and it depletes at a known rate, and so they know. That's how we can be pretty accurate within 50 years of a date, which is pretty good for when you're trying to date houses pretty old. So it's really nice, and so that's why we're searching now. Just started today down at to get radiocarbon samples at Driftwood Bed.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So, yeah.
What is radiocarbon?
Radiocarbon, we are carbon-based life forms. All living creatures on the earth are carbon. A lot of our body is carbon. And most of that is carbon-12. And yet some of it is carbon-13, which is an isotope, very irregular, and then some of it's carbon-14, and that's when molecules in the atmosphere get impacted by solar radiation, and it adds another neutron, makes it, if it's carbon-13, that's stable, it's got an extra neutron, no big deal. You get 2, it's still carbon, but it's 14, but it's radioactive, which means that extra proton is just going to fire off at one point. And if you've got a mass of carbon-14, I mean it's a minuscule, less than 1%, but we're all like radioactive right now in terms of the very minor aspects of ourselves. Carbon-14 shooting off from us all the time, but we're also eating food which has got carbon-14 in it, and so we keep the same rate. But once we die, we're not ingesting any more carbon-14, and so it just slowly starts to deplete, and then that's how because it's radioactive, it makes it a clock for us. So we can tell if anything's been within the last 50,000 years, about 50,000 years, there's no carbon-14 left in a tree limb or anything, and you got to use other methods to try to date things, which rely on typically other radioactive elements, volcanic or otherwise, which is what they do for early human sites. They use different kinds of radioactive stuff. So that's why they call it radiocarbon. It's radioactive carbon. It's less than 1/1000th of 1% of most 99% of our bodies is stable carbon, and then 99% of the remainder is carbon-13, which is also stable and fine.
Hey,
Thank you.
That's more than you wanted to know, I'm sure.
That's awesome. Yeah,
But that's how they tell.
Yeah, I've been working with Bill for a few years, and he's from the USA, but he lives here in Canada, and he teaches at Douglas College down in Burnaby area.
In New Westminster,
New
yeah.
Westminster, yeah. So he comes up here, he gets a hold of me if we want to do a dig, and I say, yeah or nay.
That's
But it's always yeah. So, last photo is your quiz. What kind of flower is that?
Fireweed.
Paintbrush.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
paintbrush.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for all coming, and it's pretty awesome.